Hi, it's Daniel Murphy, and today I'm going to put my butt on the line by going after some of the industry sacred cows here and just calling the truth, man. Let's say the truth, right? This industry suffers from these unquestioned paradigms that are just nonsense, and there's a lot of them. And some of us have been working outside the box for a little while, long enough to see how much easier and more productive work can be when you understand what the parameters of safety are, why we're doing what we're doing, and why we're not. So we're about to watch a video that's part of the Arbor Pod series where they're taking off one looks like a dead oak limb, and you'll see the way the cut's made. It doesn't actually show you the cutting process itself, but it describes it. Making a notch underneath the limb, and then cutting away the sides, each side where the edges of the hinge would be, and then making a top cut. And doing all this about 6 inches out from the branch union or the crotch. Now, if you've watched some of my videos, you'll have seen I like to make shoulder cuts right into that crotch. No undercuts, just simply top cut straight down and let the piece rip off right into the rigging. If you're working from a bucket, which this video is showing working from a bucket, if you don't have your lanyard or your climbing line tied underneath this piece, what's the point of making an undercut? The undercut's there to keep a piece from ripping. The side cuts are there to keep a piece from ripping. Well, first of all, deadwood's not going to rip no matter how you cut it, number one. And number two, it doesn't matter. A rip actually serves the purpose here. It actually helps in that the piece moves a little more slowly into the rigging. It just slows it down a little bit, and there's a little more control. Sometimes with a nice rip cut, it actually just lays out really, really soft and gentle and easy right into the rigging, which I've shown a number of times. So let's look at this video and let's just call it what it is. This is nonsense. This is ridiculous. They actually don't show the cutting, how much of a hassle it is to go ahead and try to match those cuts up underneath. They just cut right from the very beginning of the undercut, the notch, to, oh, by the way, I'm going to finish this cut with a handsaw because that's somehow safer. Like, total nonsense. And yet these are the people that are considered some of the most experienced and best industry trainers in the world. And everybody else is following their standards and, oh, this is some kind of safety issue here. Well, they don't have enough experience to realize what is really a safety issue and what's not. And so these unspoken paradigms that just keep getting passed down, and everybody's living in their little box. And here, Dan Murphy's trying to say, guys, let's think. Why? Why are we doing this? Understand the why, and then you can avoid this type of unnecessary work. And in the end of the day, an easier job is a safer job because you use less time and energy, and there's just less wasted effort that's going to take up your mental space and your physical stamina to perform a given task. So let's take a look at the video and we'll do some comments during the video. Thanks for watching.
Limb tied off. I've got the guys with about one wrap around the tree. I'm going to make a face notch on the bottom here, cut out the ends of my hinge, make my two curved cuts, and then finish it off with a top cut, and then the piece will be lowered away. Clear, making the face notch. All right, I'm going to finish this up with my handsaw. And then you guys can let her go.
What this video didn't actually include is the actual physical cut. How long did it take to make that cut? Did he have trouble matching his cuts on the notch on the blind side there? So the video starts with this shot of him starting the undercut here, the notch, and then cuts immediately right to him finishing the cut. Actually, he's finished the cut, and now he's reaching for his handsaw. Doesn't show us how much trouble that cut was to make. So that cut is unnecessary, but in order to understand why it's being taught here, let's look at where that cut comes from. This is Dave Coleman down in Australia, taking a piece off of a large mountain ash, very stringy wood, sometimes twisted grain. There's going to be a tendency when you're notching a piece like this for the bark to rip down past the notch down into the rigging lines and or your climbing lines. You want to make those score cuts underneath there to make sure that there's no chance that the bark can rip. And here's another perfect example. Here he's taking off the top of a large branch. His lanyard is a foot and a half underneath this cut. If that piece accidentally rips down into his lanyard, it has enough leverage to pin him there and kill him. So he better make a good notch and make those side cuts, score the bark there to make sure there's no rips. In this situation, it's a matter of life and death. In the situation shown earlier, it's a waste of time. And who is there to tell us the difference? So there's a huge distinction between the safety issues related to making a cut from rope and saddle on a large limb like that and working from the bucket on a short, dry oak stub. In this example, there's no need for an undercut. There's no need for side score cuts to keep the piece from ripping. There's no rope or lanyard underneath the limb here. A straight rip cut is all that's necessary. Simple top cut straight down. Watch how slowly and controlled it is moving into the rigging. No shock load. It's a beautiful cut. And you're never going to hear anybody in a training organization try to make those distinctions clear to you. Now, either they don't know enough to make those distinctions, or they don't have the time and energy to cover all the details, or they're worried about some confusion happening here and it being misconstrued, so they're just erring on the side of safety and saying, always cut like this. If you always cut like this, you're never going to die. I want to cover those kind of details. I want to discuss, like, hey, when is this cut needed? When is it appropriate? And when is it just a waste of time? And we're much better off using these other cuts. And what are the properties of these other cuts? And the same thing with many, many other issues. How we prune trees. There's so many variables, and yet we're being spoon-fed this same for the last 30 years. It hasn't changed. It's spoon-fed. This is the way to prune a tree. And it's just nonsense. And there's even really controversial cutting issues like one-handing a saw when you're aloft. Well, in certain situations, ANTS even recognizes this. The employer may be able to say, look, you're going to be safer taking that second hand off and making a reach. In this situation, I deem this to be safer. Well, what are those situations? Why aren't we discussing that? I've recently been shown a couple videos where I actually just grabbed the back strap of the top-handled saw and reach out with both hands, but the one hand's on the strap and the other hand's on the top handle, and said, look, this is a safe grip. I have full control of the saw, and I'm able to get a little further away from the cut. I like the cut. I think that's a safer cut. And yet people are going to say, oh, you can never one-hand a saw safely. We have been deceived. We've been brainwashed. We're in this mindset of silliness that needs to be addressed, and I'm trying to wake us up. I'm trying to wake you up and say, hey, there's other ways to think about this. So just try to keep an open mind. And certain people are going to go out and follow the examples they see on YouTube, and there's some really unsavory cutting going on there. It's just terrible stuff that makes me cringe, like, oh my God. And people are looking at that and saying, oh, I'm going to try that because this is how I see someone do it on YouTube. And so that's the other side of the coin, where people are getting killed out there because they're trying to emulate the type of work they see on YouTube, and they don't have the experience to know, well, hey, when is it safe to make a cut like this and when it's not. So I'd like to discuss some of that, but it's risky for me. I'm putting myself on the line trying to say, hey, here's when this cut can be used and here's when it can't. Here are the safety factors related to using a saw like this or roping a piece like that. What's going to happen here? People are going to react to me and say, this Dan Murphy is a dangerous guy out there. He's, going outside the norms that have been set, the standards of safety that have been set for decades in the industry, and he's some wild maniac that's going to kill people. We've all been drinking the Koolaid to whatever degree we have. A lot of the techniques I've shown over the years are actually safer, allowing the faller to step away from the base of the tree before calling for the pull, for example, or allowing a faller to drop a tree rather than having to send a climber up some unstable tree. It's always going to be safer. And yet there's this grand suspicion within the industry of, hey, this is different. I've never seen this before, and therefore I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. And I'm going to listen to these dinosaurs that have been telling me, cut it like this for decades. And that's the way it's going to be. And I don't want to hear anything else. And then there's the other side of the coin are actually following dangerous protocols they see on YouTube because they don't know the difference. And there's no one there to bridge that gap to say, hey, this is the knowledge that we need to make the distinctions to understand how to do this job at a whole nother level, but do it safely. One more point about this video. Here he's using a handsaw to finish up a cut on a 10 or 12 inch dead oak. That is just so out of touch with reality. I don't know one climber in 100 that would choose to do that. And I don't say this out of disrespect. I do respect Arbor Master, Rip, and the ISA. They've made huge contributions. This is just an example of how far out of touch this kind of teaching is with the reality that's happening in the field out there. And, you know I'm stepping on some toes here. Some big players in the industry, there's likely going to be some pushback. This isn't a popularity contest. I'm doing this because I think this is something that needs to be said within the industry, and some changes need to come, and they're going to come eventually. They have to come. But it's just a matter of how and when. Because I love the work that I do, and I really have a passion for it, and I like sharing that with you. So let's continue to carry on this conversation. I appreciate you watching. I hope you're safe out there. Any questions, any comments, please let me know. I'll do the best I can to answer them. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.